Ever thought of doing a test knit? Was it a good idea? Bad idea? Well, join me and we'll talk about the pros and cons and my experience as a test knitter. See you in a minute. Hi, this is Beth from Beth's Mixed Bag of Knittin without a G, and this is Marvin, my co-host, who sometimes is quiet and sometimes he's not. And today we're going to talk about test knits. And the reason I picked today to do it is because I've done test knits with Zanete Knits, and today is the release of this Hima pattern. And I thought it'd be a good day to showcase the pattern because I had a great time doing it and talk about test knits and my experience. There's a lot of controversy around test knits, and people have opinions of all different kinds. They love it, they hate it, and have all kinds of complaints. I've had a great experience, so I thought I would share it with you and talk about my experience and what I liked about it and why it's been such a great experience. So, why would you do a test knit? Well, I think the only reason you do a test knit is because you look at a pattern and say, I want that pattern. I want to have it today and I want to knit it today and I want to buy it. If you're willing to buy it and it's one that you want to buy, there's, I think, very little downside on doing a test knit. And that's what happened to me. I saw the Elza sweater on Facebook or Instagram, one of those things. And I thought, oh my gosh, I want to make that sweater right now. And I looked and saw that I couldn't make it right now because it wasn't released, but I saw that I could test knit. And I'd applied for some test knits before and hadn't gotten chosen, so I didn't really know how it worked. So I applied and I got accepted. So I made this Elza sweater, which was the first one. Here, hold on. And this one is by Zanete Knits. I did it in November of 2025. And this is knit in Sea Change Fibers Shoreline Sport Blue J. Okay, and it's also Expression Fibers Mirage Sport, one of my favorite yarns, in Oatmilk. And this was a all over color work. It was a great experience. It was definitely a challenge for me because I'd never done a all over color work where you had to pay attention to every single stitch. No wine drinking with this pattern. I sat in my knitting room with my iPad in front of me and I followed my chart. Yes, I think over time you can kind of figure it out, but for me it wasn't. Sure enough, and I looked away. If I wasn't paying attention, I was thinking back. Markers were a great help because of the sequence, and at least I knew if I screwed up, it was only a short period of time. But it was a really good experience for me, and it really pushed me as far as focusing on the color work and what I needed to do and the support I got. So that's the biggest benefit. You get the pattern you want, and you get it now, and you get it for free. What other benefits are there? Well, a lot of designers, as Zanete Knits does, offers you a discount on yarn. I try and use my stash yarn, and that's what I did here, and that's why there's two different kinds of yarn. I bought the blue while I was in Rhinebeck last year, and so I was excited to use it, and the cream had been left over from another project, so it worked out perfect. I had enough of it to do the color work, so that was a great way to use some yarn that had been stuffed in my drawer with no real purpose. So that's always fun when you can use stuff from your stash. And so I didn't use the discount code. I've traditionally not used the discount code because I try and use my stash yarn. Obviously, the free pattern. Zanete Knits also gives you another pattern for free when you complete the sweater. So that's kind of fun because I love her patterns and I keep stashing them up and putting them in my library. The other thing I like is the other knitter friends you meet. Some people say it's cliquey. I'm not really sure what that means. Cliquey to me is like you're hanging out with some people and not hanging out with other people. I found that the groups were very friendly. There's a Slack channel, and it's a private Slack channel and a private Facebook channel. And all the knitters on there have been just friendly, supportive, helpful. You know, when I asked opinions, shared things, discussed things. I don't know what, maybe other groups are cliquey, I'm not sure, but this group has been really wonderful to work with. So I kind of like that. I like the first day where people are signing in from all over the world. You know, I'm from Amsterdam, I'm from New Zealand, I'm from Italy, and that's really fun to see people from all over the world, and we're all doing the same sweater, and I think that's really cool. And so you meet knitters around the world, and that's kind of a fun experience, I think. You also have help and support. When there's a question you have, this one, it's been a while, but I had some questions and they were very responsive. I think I modified the neck because I wanted a little bit more lightweight. I'm always looking for ways to make things more San Diego appropriate because we have obviously warmer weather here. We have obviously cool mornings, but warmer weather. So I'm always seeing if I can modify things, and that's something you can do. One of the other benefits, I almost always learn something from each pattern, and I like that. I think that sometimes we can get in a rut. So you're doing a pattern, and it tells you to use some new technique. And you think, oh, I can do this other technique that I know how to do. I don't have to worry about learning something new. I can do it this way. It's a different cast on, and you know how to do the cast on. You always do. So you just do that and ignore what the pattern says. Well, since it's test knit, I try and do it exactly the way the pattern tells me, unless it's something significant, like obviously I don't want to make the arms longer than my arm. But I try and do what the test knitter tells me to do, or test pattern tells me to do, so it will come out that way. And so as a consequence, I often learn things and force myself to learn stuff. Her patterns often have little video links that you can look at and learn the new stuff. And so that's been a good experience for me also. So I think all of those are benefits of doing a test knit. Complaints on both sides. People obviously complain they're not getting paid to do it. That's true. You're not getting paid to do it. You should only do it if it's something you want to do. Is it going to make you happy? As I've talked about in other videos, if there's something about knitting that doesn't make you happy, besides frogging, it doesn't make anybody happy, you should change it. Okay? If your stash is not stored the way you want it, if the yarn, whatever it is, this is your hobby, it should bring you joy. If it's not bringing you joy, don't do it. Same applies for test knits. If you think it's fun and you think you're going to enjoy it, do it. If you try it and don't like it, don't do it. You need to make sure it makes you happy. So if it's going to bother you that it's what you consider free labor, absolutely don't do it. The designers aren't, don't pay you. They give you a pattern. They give you maybe 2 patterns. They give you a discount on yarn. People complain about the timelines. The reality is before you start the sweater, they tell you what the timelines are. So if that timeline is not something that you're comfortable with, don't do it. Don't stress yourself out. It's not worth it. It depends on what your schedule is. If you're someone that has a very busy schedule, you've got toddlers at home, and you're lucky to knit 30 or 40 minutes a day, a test knit's probably not for you because it may take you 3, 4, 5 months to do a sweater. I'm an empty nester. Marvin's my only child at home right now. So I have more time. I work from home, so a lot of times I'm on the phone talking to clients, and so I'm able to knit while I'm talking. It actually makes me much more patient when people are maybe complaining about something, and I can be much more compassionate when I have the knitting in my hands. But I have a lot more time to knit because I don't have those family commitments, and I can do that. And so I have that time. People complain. Sometimes I think there's an issue when you have a bigger size. That's obviously a valid complaint. I don't know because I'm making a smaller size, but I think that it seems to me that the bigger size on the group have finished in a timely manner. So, I see all the different other test knitters, and it seems like they have. So I think Zanete Knits does give you enough time, even at the bigger sizes. So that's a complaint that people have all the time. One of the complaints the designers have is people either don't get gauged, don't do the size, or they just ghost them altogether. Apparently, a lot of people will sign up to be a test knitter. They'll get the pattern for free, and that's the last time the designer hears from them. I've heard that some designers try and get paid for the pattern if the person doesn't complete it. I don't really know how that works. I think that's one of the reasons sometimes they ask you if you've done test knits before. They want to know, have you completed them, and that kind of issue. And that makes sense. They want someone that's going to be consistent and be on track. So that's a complaint the designers have. I heard some people complain that some of the designers weren't nice to them. That's so inconceivable to me because this has been such a wonderful experience. They've been not only very nice, sometimes I think nicer than I deserve. Sometimes I can be a pest. There have been days when I would send 3 or 4 emails in the same day. And instead of being annoyed with me, each email was very sweet, very responsive. I've even started the email, sorry I'm being a pest, but, and the response was, you're not being a pest, we're happy to help you. So it's been such a great experience that I can't imagine that if you had bad experience and you didn't like it because the designer wasn't nice, but you like the other parts, I'd encourage you to try a different designer, because I think that their goal is to be a cooperative effort between everybody and to make it a fun experience for everybody. And they want people to want to test knit their things. So I think for the most part, if you had a bad experience, I would suggest you venture out if you like the other parts of it. What are the requirements? Okay. So the first requirement is to get it done in a timely manner. Obviously, that's important. Gauge is critical. Size is critical. They want to be able to tell people, and people want to be able to look and see what gauge you got, and is it the gauge that matches the size and the size right. That's important. So, I spend a lot of time going through my closet, finding yarn that will meet the gauge. And sometimes that's quite a bit more swatching than I want to do, because normally if I'm doing a pattern and my gauge is a little off, I can just adjust the size. Obviously, you're not doing it at the test knit. You've committed to a size and you have to get a gauge and do that size. So if I swatch some yarn and I can't get to the gauge, I need to find different yarn, because that's really important. Part of the test knit is that you must get gauge. Now, you don't have to get row and stitch gauge. You can adjust, obviously, the row. That's something I don't think is a big deal. Obviously, getting both sometimes can be very difficult, if not impossible, but you can watch for inches and it will talk to you about, in the patterns normally will say, this many inches. So it's not a particular number of stitches, though I'll talk about that later in one that I had a problem with that. So those are the basic requirements. They also want you to normally answer questions and provide feedback at the end. They want to know how much yarn you used. They want you to weigh the yarn and tell them exactly how many yards, not a half a skein. So before I start, I weigh my yarn. After I start, I have my little scale and I weigh the yarn. I do the math. I calculate how many yards per gram and I multiply that out, and I try and send the exact yardage I used. It takes a little time, but that's part of the process, and that's something they want back. Zanete Knits also asks you to create a Ravelry page, and on that Ravelry page, you'll put the name of the test knit as the pattern name, and that way I think they can track it and see what's going on. And then when the pattern actually comes out, it seems like it automatically just links to my Ravelry page. I haven't done anything, and all of a sudden that pattern is showing up. So they want you to create that Ravelry page. They also want you to wait until launch to post a picture of you in your sweater. You can post pictures along the way as you're knitting on social media, but they don't want you to post the finished product until you're finished. And they also ask you to send a picture. In Zanete Knits, they always ask me, is it okay if we use your picture? And I always say yes, I don't care. It's kind of fun. I was excited one time when my picture ended up on the front page of the pattern. I thought that was all very cool, and I felt very special. So that's kind of a fun thing. So that's what their expectations are as far as your commitment to be a test knitter. Okay, who benefits? I think the knitter benefits. I know people are all focused on the designer benefiting, but for me, the benefit for me is I get the free pattern, I get it now, I get help. It's kind of like my own private knit along, because I'm doing the same one with everybody else. I'm seeing all the different colors. People are talking about issues they're having, so I can avoid that issue before I get there. If there's something that's a little complicated, people will talk about that on the Slack page. So it's like having your own knit along every time you do a test knit, which I think is lots of fun. Sometimes I'll try and get my friends to a knit along, and every once in a while I can, but not that often. So I really enjoy it from that perspective. I like the social part. So I think the knitter has a great benefit. Obviously, the designer benefits. The designer benefits because they have a testing pool on Ravelry. They have people in different sizes and shapes that they can put on Ravelry. I think that's important. They find mistakes, things that are confusing. They get pictures of the different sizes and shapes. But I think what goes unsaid a lot of times is the people that really benefit are the people that want to do the pattern later. For me, I don't want to do a pattern that doesn't have a lot of samples done. I actually recently worked on one, and once I got all excited by the picture, started doing it, and it was one problem after another. I won't tell you who it was, but it was one that when I started researching it, the designer was Russian. And when I looked at the couple patterns and looked at their Ravelry account, the couple products that had been done, while the designer said that she had test knit it in English, My gut is it wasn't a native English speaker, because I looked at the other people that had done there was like maybe four projects done. And either they had no notes, or when I looked at their Ravelry page, they were Ukrainian, things like that, but not native English speakers. So there was a lot of problems. So I always try and look and see how many times has the pattern been done, and I read people's comments. What did they say about it? So I know if this is something I want to do, or if there's problems, or something they modified that will be helpful to me. So for me as a knitter, having a whole bunch of people that have knit it before is very helpful. So I think the biggest benefit for test knitting are future knitters, because they get the feedback and the input and the experience of the test knitters, and they can read about it. They can look and see, gosh, does this shoulder hit me right? Is that I have a similar body shape? Like boat necks, terrible on me. Finally figured that out. So now when I see the way the neck hits on certain patterns, I won't do them because I did a couple of them and they look terrible on me. So I've learned what looks good on me, and so I look for people that are similar shape and how they look on them. I think that's a big benefit for future knitters. So I think they're the community that benefits the most from test knitting. All right, how do you become a test knitter? Well, the first thing obviously is to find out about it. So there's a couple ways to find out about it. The designers will often put something on their Instagram page or on Ravelry. A lot of the designers will have newsletters, and that's how a couple of them I've found out about them. I applied for another one with a different designer that I'm on their newsletter, and I didn't get it, but it was kind of cool because the designer sent us all a one-time code to get a discount on any of our other patterns, which I thought was very sweet. Didn't have to do that, but just for applying, I got a discount code. Zanete Knits often has it on Instagram, and then you get a newsletter, and the newsletter will say it's going to be released, tomorrow at whatever time. And so finding out about it is the first thing. So with Zanete Knits, I sit by my computer and I wait for it to drop. Fortunately for me, the time they drop is morning. I don't remember, 7 or 8 in the morning. And I sit there and I click. And I click right away because I think first come, first serve is a big issue, especially depending on when the sizes get filled up. And then you have to fill out a bunch of information. They want to know if you've test knitted before. They want to know if you have a Ravelry page, what it is, and your Instagram page. I think they want to look. I don't know. I haven't done it because I've never chosen test knitters to see, is this within your skill set? Are you applying to a complex colorwork sweater when all you've made is scarves? They want you to be successful. It's no help to anybody if you're not successful. And you're not going to be able to learn something like that as part of a test knit. So they want that information. I think that helps them decide who they choose. The little form, and then you wait. Normally, I hear back, I think the same day. So it's not a long wait. With the other one I applied for, one of them I never heard back at all. And then the other one, the other designer, it was about 3 or 4 days. And you got an email saying, you have not been selected, but thank you very much for applying. And here's a discount code. Okay, so I'm obsessed. I love it. I'm actually kind of disappointed because a new one came out the other day that I just can't put into my plate. Well, I can, but part of the issue is it would be a winter weight sweater, and I'm hot into summer weight now. So I didn't do it, but it's really pretty, and I'm going to definitely get that pattern so I can do it in the winter. But my next one was the Pasha sweater, okay? And this is the Pasha sweater. I loved this one. This one was in fingering weight, so it took longer. But this one, for example, had a much bigger neck. I asked for modifications, San Diego, so I cut the neck down so it would not be as wintry. As a fingering weight, it obviously took longer. This is done in Expression Fiber Arts Signature Fingering. Are you seeing a pattern here? I love their yarn. I love the way she displays the colors, and it makes me want to buy everything she does, which I'm not allowed to buy her yarn anymore. I'm on restriction, though I just bought some that was on sale. Fingering weight, the expressions, it is Radiant Hope. The contrast color was kind of cool because one of my friends had some extra of this Baltosh silk cloud left over. And the main color here, well, it appears to be purple. I don't know if you can really see, but there's like little hints of this teal. And so when Andrea walked in with this couple skeins of this leftover Baltosh teal, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I know it matches this other yarn I had. And it's actually had been in my closet for about a year, stuffed in the same bag with the purple. and just waiting for a project. So that was kind of fun. So I did that, and the color I think is Lagoon Light. And I finished this in February 2026. It's very soft and very cozy, and that was also a fun experience. Had a great time. So still knitting away. Then I saw the Hyatt top, Hayat. This one was released July 1. Here is the picture of it. Now, this one was a little different for a couple reasons. This one's in Lamana Perla. I don't know why I didn't record the colors, but I didn't. This one I went out and bought yarn, and here's why. I have pants, this color pink. Most of the time I feel like I have to wear white with those pants because otherwise I look like an Easter egg. So my goal was to make a summer top that I could wear with those pink pants and not look like an Easter egg. So by putting the taupe and pink together, it really tones it down. So I did buy yarn, and yeah, it worked out really well. Now, this one was a little more complicated, okay, for a couple reasons. I thought it looked really cool because the color work was the bottom. I thought, great, you'll do all your shaping stuff up here, and you won't do the color work to the bottom when that's all you're paying attention to. Well, the first time I did it, my row gauge was off, and I wasn't measuring and trying on like I should have. Well, by the time I tried it on, the armpit came down to here. So I had to frog the whole thing. Okay, fixed that, got that done, used a smaller needle, got a better gauge the second time because as I started knitting, while I'd done a gauge swatch, sometimes when I knit for a while, my gauge will change. I get more relaxed, whatever. So I try and remeasure my gauge as I go along. I did that here. I knew my gauge was a little off, but I was like, oh, I'm too far along. I'm not doing it. So since I had to start over again, change needle size, got a better gauge. Didn't try it on as often as I should. And then I tried it on after having done some of the color work. And I realized if I completed the color work, it would come down to my mid-thigh. So once again, a modification was necessary. I contacted them. They said, don't worry about it. We talked about when would be a good place to finish the color work. Mine is different, but they just asked that I record all the modifications. So one of the things I did was I labeled my project Short Person Alert. So, or something like that, short people notice, so that anybody doing the project moving forward would be more conscious of it. Now, one of the other test knitters commented that I could just go back and start it sooner, but I felt like if I started it sooner, the color work would start at a place in my bust that was not going to be attractive. I didn't want to start mid-bust, and I just didn't think that would look good. One of the other test knitters made one for her daughter and started higher, and it looked nice, but it depends on your shape and size, and that's something you need to consider. So I did have quite the short person lesson and putting the color work at the bottom. One of the fun things for this one that I learned was I learned how to use Japanese short rows. And I fell in love with Japanese short rows. I had not done that before, loved them. When Zanete Knits does it, she uses a bobby pin. But one of the things I ended up using was those lobster claw stitch markers, which I never really liked and knew what people did with them. I loved it for this. They worked great. I put it on there. If you've never done Japanese short rows, I highly recommend watching YouTube videos. Zanete Knits video is great on it. I think they look way better than the wrap and turn or the German short row. Obviously, that's a personal preference, but it is now my short row of choice. I've done it on the other ones. This one I did also, the German short rows. But that's an example of something that she said to do. And because it was a test knit, I tried to do exactly what she did, and I learned that technique, and it was fun. I've also, between that one and this one, learned that my new favorite construction is the way she does these set-in shoulders, where she starts in the back and then picks up the stitches and does the front. One of the things that does is it gives the sweater more structure. Okay, so it's like having seams, but not having the disadvantage of sewing stuff together at the end and having a bunch of pieces. So you have seams that gives it extra structure, especially when you're using a yarn that has more drape. And so you get these seams, gets the structure. You also avoid sewing things together at the end, and you can try things on. So it's still top down. So that was something that I've decided is now my new favorite type of construction. Still a top down, but I will now be looking for patterns and have those seams in them. I think it gives you a nice finished product. I've been very happy with it. So here's the last one. the Himma top, Himma top. It's being released today. The pattern's being released. I think if you go to her website, oftentimes she puts a discount code. I know I've often seen a discount code on Instagram, so I recommend checking that out. This is a wonderful pattern for a bunch of reasons. Number one, I think it's a very beginner-friendly color work pattern. So if you see, there's a lot of basic stocking net in between, okay? So it's not like the Elsa sweater where you're having to concentrate every single row. There's only a short part of real color work because a lot of times in between here, you're doing a whole row of one color, a whole row of another color. Sometimes you're doing one stitch of the one color, one stitch of the other color. Obviously not that hard either. So both of those things make it a really good beginner pattern, I think. Very beginner friendly. That being said, I still had a little frogging because while I was trying it on, asking the Hive Mind on the Slack channel whether they thought the length was good or should I go one more section of color work, one of the ladies said, Beth, I'm sure you noticed this, but you missed a row of color work. And in my last section of color work, I actually had missed a row. And unfortunately, once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it, so I had to frog that back. It did give me an extra row of length, so that was good. But yeah, I was really happy with that. Other modification I made that I checked first is I wanted the sleeve a certain length, so instead of doing, but I wanted the extra color work. So I did the color work, but I didn't do the ribbing. And so I just did the simpler bind off that I think this was it this one or one of the Icelandic bind off I learned on this too. That was fun. So that was another thing I learned, which normally I would have just done a bind off I knew and was comfortable with. Here, I spent the time. I learned something new because it was the test knit. I'm trying to do it like the designer wants. So that was fun. So that was another thing I learned. The group was helpful just in, like I said, decide, is this too long? Do I need longer? What do you think? I love that. The community is just a fun thing for my part. So that's this sweater. If you're a beginner color work person, you haven't done color work before, this might be a good one for you because it doesn't require the concentration that some of the color work patterns do. And the pattern is pretty simple as far as following it. There's also short floats. I don't think you ever really have to catch the float if you don't want to because they are so short. So that's kind of a nice thing for a beginner, and it gives you the ability to kind of guide your tension better because the floats are not long. Currently, I'm working on the Daydream Lily sweater. You'll see my progress if you look on Instagram. Once again, I can't release the final sweater. It's not done yet, but hopefully it will be done soon. I think the due date is about the time that this video is due, so I should have it done by the time this video drops, but I'm currently working on it, and I'll show you I'm doing it in a cream and brown. It's a really pretty pattern with flowers, so I think it'll be nice. I have trouble resisting any pattern with flowers. So when the finished product will be released to you on my Instagram page on the release date for the pattern. And I think I'm going to enjoy that. It also has duplicate stitches, which I've never done. I still haven't decided whether I'm going to do the duplicate stitches. We'll see when it ends. I've got to figure out what color I might want to do for that, but that's looking forward to a new skill I'll learn. So I'd love to hear from you. As I said before, tell me about your experience. Tell me, I really am looking for great experiences. If there's one that was really bad, certainly tell us. But I'd like to know whether designers are fun to work with. My experience is limited because it's been so good. I've kind of stuck with it. I love all of her patterns. Every once in a while, there's one that I think, that's not for me. But for the most, like I'm not doing socks and things like that. But most of the time I see her patterns and think, I want to make that. So comment below. If you've enjoyed this video, please press the like button. Consider subscribing. I'd love that. If you want to see my finished products, my works in progress, please go to my Instagram account. It's also called Mixed Bag of Knittin with no G. If you're wondering why I did that, it's because Ravelry had a character limit and I wanted the name to be the same everywhere. So on Ravelry, I'm also Mixed Bag of Knittin. You can see all the sweaters I've knitted. You're welcome to go look at that. And like I said, if you enjoyed this, please come back. Please subscribe. We hope to see you again. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. Have a great day.